Hawaii, paradise on earth.
Murder of a woman in Waikiki last spring.
Warm sand, crystal clear waters, palm trees swaying in the breeze.
The body of a missing Portland tourist was found in a brushy area near a Hawaiian coastline.
Every year, millions of people come here to escape, to celebrate, to make memories that last a lifetime. But on May 20th, 2013, a young boy exploring a remote area near Yokohama Bay on Oahu's western coast stumbled upon something that would haunt him forever.
Ivy Harris was last seen alive talking to an unidentified man outside of a Waikiki bar.
Hidden in thick brush at the bottom of a hill near a place called Makua Cave lay the decomposing body of a young woman. She was naked. She had been there for days. 4 days earlier, this woman had been alive, laughing, texting her mother, posting beach photos on Facebook. She'd flown to Hawaii to celebrate her 29th birthday with her boyfriend and a close friend, a tropical getaway, a celebration of life. She never made it to that birthday. What happened in those final hours? Where did she go that night? Who was the last person to see her alive? And why did they kill her? The answers would take investigators down a path nobody expected. Surveillance footage, cell phone pings, DNA evidence, and a suspect that would shock everyone who thought they knew this case. This is the story of Ivanice Ivy Harris. Before we go any further, I need you to understand who Ivanice Harris actually was, because in cases like this, it's too easy to reduce someone to a headline, a statistic, a case number. Ivy was a real person with dreams, with family who loved her, with a life that was cut brutally short. Ivanice Harris was born and raised in Portland, Oregon. By 2013, at 28 years old, she was living in Las Vegas, but she never lost her connection to Portland. Her roots were there. Her family was there. According to Andre Miller, a childhood friend who later served as the family spokesperson, Ivy had enrolled at Mount Hood Community College and was making plans to move back to Portland to be closer to her family. She wasn't someone who had given up on life or stopped trying to build a future. She had ambitions. She had goals. She wanted to come home. Her mother adored her. They texted regularly, talked on the phone, kept that mother-daughter bond strong despite the distance. When Ivy went to Hawaii, she made sure to check in, made sure her mom knew she was okay, made sure she felt connected even from thousands of miles away. In May 2013, Ivy flew to Honolulu with her boyfriend Mark and her friend Jillian. The trip had a simple purpose: celebrate Ivy's upcoming 29th birthday in paradise. Sun, sand, ocean, good company. What could go wrong? May 15th, 2013, the day before everything changed. Ivy spent that day doing exactly what you'd expect someone to do in Hawaii. She went to Waikiki Beach with Mark and Jillian. She soaked in the sun. She took photos and posted one to Facebook. She texted her mother back in Portland, telling her she was having a great time celebrating her birthday. Her mother received that text, read those words, smiled knowing her daughter was happy. She had no idea it would be one of the last messages she'd ever receive from Ivy. That evening, the trio headed back to their hotel to rest and get ready for a night out. They were going to hit the bars in Waikiki, celebrate Ivy's birthday properly, make it a night to remember. Around 1 a.m. on May 16th, Ivy got restless. Mark and Jillian were still getting ready, taking their time. Ivy didn't want to wait. She told them she was heading out to Kelly O'Neill's, a popular, well-known bar in Waikiki, and that she'd meet up with them later. "I'll see you there." Those were essentially her last words to them. Ivy walked out of that hotel room expecting to reunite with her boyfriend and friend within hours. She had no reason to think otherwise, no reason to be afraid, no idea that she was walking toward the last night of her life. Hours passed. Mark and Jillian made it to Kelly O'Neill's. They looked around for Ivy. She wasn't there. Maybe she went somewhere else. Maybe she got distracted. Maybe she met some people and lost track of time. They waited. Morning came. Still no Ivy. Now they were worried. This wasn't like her. She wouldn't just disappear without telling anyone. She wouldn't miss her own birthday celebration. Something was wrong. They started calling everyone she knew. They went back to the hotel. They checked the beach, the bars, anywhere she might have gone. Nothing. Ivy had vanished. Mark filed a missing persons report with Honolulu police. He told them his girlfriend had gone out alone the night before and never returned. He gave them her description, her photo, everything he could think of. The search began. But Honolulu police were about to discover something that would completely change the direction of this investigation. Detective Drew Akagi caught the case. From the beginning, he knew that finding Ivy, or finding out what happened to her, would require old-fashioned detective work. Waikiki is one of the most surveilled areas in Hawaii. Cameras everywhere. Hotels, bars, ATMs, streets. If Ivy had been anywhere in that area, there was a chance she'd been captured on video. Akagi started making calls. He contacted every hotel in the area. He obtained subpoenas for security footage. He sat down and began reviewing hours upon hours of video, looking for any sign of Ivanice Harris, and he found her. The outdoor surveillance cameras at Kelly O'Neill's captured footage of Ivy walking up to the bar around 3 a.m. But here's what's strange. There's no evidence she ever actually went inside. Bar employees had no memory of seeing her, so where did she go? She was talking to some man. Akagi kept searching, and then he found footage from the Aston Waikiki Beach Hotel, 3:41 a.m., May 16, 2013. The lobby camera captured Ivanice Harris entering the hotel. She wasn't alone. She was with a man. Akagi watched as they walked together toward the elevator. They got in. The doors closed. And then, on camera, clear as day, they kissed. This was the last time Ivanice Harris would ever be seen alive. But wait, Ivy came to Hawaii with her boyfriend Mark. So, who was this other man? Why was she kissing a stranger in an elevator at 3:41 in the morning? Detective Akagi needed answers, and the surveillance footage was about to reveal something even more disturbing. Akagi kept reviewing the footage from the Aston Waikiki Beach Hotel, 5:58 a.m., May 16, 2013, approximately 2 hours after Ivy was last seen alive. The elevator camera captured a man entering alone. Same man from before, but this time he was carrying something, a large rolling duffel bag. The footage showed him struggling with the bag. It got stuck several times as he tried to maneuver it into the elevator. When he finally got it positioned, something about the way he moved made it clear. This bag was heavy, very heavy. But here's what really stood out to Akagi: the man's appearance. He was wearing jeans and a long-sleeve shirt. Not exactly typical attire for Hawaii in May, when temperatures regularly hit the 80s. He had on a floppy bucket hat with a wide brim, and the tag was still hanging off the back. And throughout the entire time he was in that elevator, he kept his back to the camera. He stood facing the corner, never once turning around. It was as if he knew exactly where the camera was and was deliberately trying to hide his face. The footage continued tracking him. He exited the elevator and walked to the valet parking area, where a white SUV was waiting. A valet approached and offered to help with the bag. The man waved him off. Then he tried to lift the bag into the trunk. He struggled, visibly. It took him several attempts to finally get it in there. And when he did, the vehicle noticeably sagged under the weight. What was in that bag? Akagi felt his stomach drop. He already suspected the answer. 9:14 a.m., May 16th. Same hotel, same elevator, same man. He was still wearing the jeans and long-sleeved shirt, still had the bucket hat pulled low, but this time there was no duffel bag, just a small white towel. Detective Akagi looked at the timeline. 3:41 a.m. The man enters the elevator with Ivy. They kiss. 5:58 a.m. The man leaves the hotel alone with a heavy duffel bag. 9:14 a.m. The man returns without the bag. 3 hours and 16 minutes. Where had he been? What had he done with that bag? Ivy was still missing, and now Akagi had a suspect. A faceless man in a bucket hat who had been the last person seen with her. He needed to identify this man. He needed to find out what happened in that hotel room. And he needed to figure out where that duffel bag had ended up. May 20th, 2013, 4 days after Ivy disappeared. The western tip of Oahu is remote. Beautiful, but isolated. Yokohama Bay is about as far from Waikiki's tourist crowds as you can get while still being on the same island. A young boy was exploring the area near Makua Cave when he noticed something in the thick brush at the bottom of a hill. A body. He ran to get help. When Honolulu homicide detectives arrived at the scene, they found the remains of a young black woman. She was naked. She'd been exposed to Hawaii's tropical climate for 4 days, which meant significant decomposition had already set in. She was eventually identified through tattoo recognition and fingerprint analysis. It was Ivanice Harris. The medical examiner's initial assessment delivered grim news. Ivy had died from an injury to the neck, but because of the advanced decomposition, the examiner couldn't provide specific details about whether she'd been strangled manually, whether a ligature had been used, or exactly how the fatal injury had been inflicted. What they could say with certainty was this: Ivanice Harris had been murdered, and whoever did it had gone to great lengths to hide her body in a place where they hoped she might never be found. Now Detective Akagi had a body, he had surveillance footage, and he had a timeline, but he still didn't know who the man in the bucket hat was, and he didn't know for certain that the man was connected to Ivy's death. Even though every instinct told him he was, he needed to prove it. Akagi discovered that the suspect had purchased a pay-as-you-go cell phone specifically for his trip to Hawaii. These prepaid phones are harder to trace than contract phones, but not impossible. He pulled the ping data, the records showing which cell towers the phone had connected to at various times. At 8 a.m. on May 16th, just 2 hours after the man left the hotel with the duffel bag, that phone pinged off a tower on the Waianae coast. The Waianae coast, remote, isolated, just a few miles from Makua Cave, the exact location where Ivy's body was found. But here's what made Akagi certain. The phone pinged that same location again later that night. 2 trips to the same remote area on the day Ivy disappeared. Akagi's theory: the man had driven out to the Waianae coast early that morning to scout the area, to find a suitable location to dump a body. Then he'd returned later that night to actually dispose of Ivy. Rental car records confirmed his suspicions. The man had put over 400 miles on his white SUV during just 5 days in Hawaii. 400 miles, on an island where you can drive the entire perimeter in a few hours. He'd been driving around, searching, looking for the perfect spot to hide what he'd done. Detective Akagi went back to the hotel's reservation system. He started looking for guests who fit a particular profile. Someone who checked in alone, someone who declined housekeeping service, a logical precaution if you don't want anyone seeing what's in your room, someone who matched the physical description from the footage. One guest stood out: room 924. The guest had checked in alone. He'd requested no housekeeping. And when Akagi compared the check-in footage to the footage of the man with the duffel bag, the match was clear. Same person, same bag, same sunglasses pushed up on his head. Now he had a name. But before I tell you who this man was, I need to go back and explain something that's been hanging over this entire story. Remember when I told you that Ivy came to Hawaii with her boyfriend Mark and her friend Jillian? Remember how I mentioned that the night she disappeared, she left their hotel alone to meet them at a bar? So why was she kissing a stranger in an elevator at 3:41 a.m.? The answer changes everything you think you know about this case. As investigators dug deeper into Ivy's background, they uncovered something her family didn't talk about publicly. Ivy made her living as a traveling escort. She posted advertisements online to connect with clients in various cities. She didn't hide this from the people closest to her. It was how she survived, how she made money while trying to figure out her next steps in life. And her boyfriend Mark? His full name was Mark Miles Jr., and his relationship with Ivy was more complicated than boyfriend. Mark was Ivy's pimp. He and Ivy traveled together along with Jillian, who also worked as an escort, running a mobile operation that spanned Hawaii, Alaska, Idaho, Minnesota, and Nevada. On May 11, 2013, just 5 days before she disappeared, Ivy and Jillian had posted an advertisement online marketing their escort services in Waikiki. This trip to Hawaii wasn't just a birthday vacation, it was also work. So when Ivy left the hotel alone that night, she wasn't just going to meet Mark and Jillian at a bar. She was looking for clients. And at some point, she connected with the man who would end her life. I'm telling you all this because it matters for understanding what happened. But I want to be absolutely clear about something. None of this, not one single detail about Ivy's work or her relationship with Mark, means she deserved what happened to her. None of it makes her death less tragic. None of it makes her less worthy of justice. Ivy was 28 years old. She was planning to go back to school. She wanted to move home to Portland to be closer to her family. She had a mother who loved her and texted her every day. The choices she made to survive don't determine the value of her life. The guest in room 924 had a name, Nathaniel Cosby. And when Detective Akagi ran that name, the results were not what he expected. Nathaniel Cosby wasn't some random tourist. He wasn't a drifter or a criminal with a record. He was a master sergeant in the United States Marine Corps, 38 years old, 17 years of military service since 1996. His job was one of the most demanding and respected in the military: explosive ordnance disposal. A bomb technician, he was assigned to Marine Wing Support Squadron 171 in the 1st Marine Aircraft Wing, based out of Iwakuni, Japan. At the time, he was on temporary duty assignment in Hawaii. On paper, Nathaniel Cosby was an exemplary service member. Nearly 2 decades of dedicated service, a position requiring significant trust, specialized training, and security clearances. The kind of career that suggested discipline, responsibility, stability. And now he was the prime suspect in the murder of Ivanice Harris. June 3, 2013. Police arrested Nathaniel Cosby at Honolulu International Airport. When they brought him in for questioning, Cosby presented a story. He admitted that he'd picked up Ivy outside a Waikiki bar. He admitted that he'd spent the night with her in his hotel room, but he denied killing her. Then detectives started showing him the surveillance footage: the elevator at 3:41 a.m., him kissing Ivy; the elevator at 5:58 a.m., him struggling with a heavy duffel bag; the elevator at 9:14 a.m., him returning without the bag. When confronted with this evidence, Cosby stopped talking. He invoked his right to remain silent and requested a lawyer. Here's where things got complicated. In Hawaii, prosecutors have 48 hours after an arrest to file formal charges. The DNA evidence that could definitively link Ivy to Cosby's duffel bag wasn't ready yet. Those results would take months to process. Without that forensic confirmation, prosecutors weren't ready to charge. Cosby was released, not set free entirely. He was temporarily reassigned to Marine Corps Base Hawaii in Kaneohe, where, according to a Marine Corps spokesman, he was free to come and go as he pleased, like all other Marines. A suspected murderer, walking around a military base, waiting for lab results that would determine his fate. The Naval Criminal Investigative Service took over the case from Honolulu Police, transitioning it from civilian to military jurisdiction. And the waiting began. 3 months later, the results arrived. The DNA swabs taken from inside Nathaniel Cosby's duffel bag matched Ivanice Harris, but that wasn't all. Inside that duffel bag, investigators had also found fragments of Ivy's fingernails and strands of hair from her wig. Think about what that evidence tells us. Her fingernails, broken, inside his bag. Ivy had fought. She had clawed at her attacker, at the bag, at anything she could reach. She hadn't gone quietly. She had struggled desperately for her life, and there was more evidence pointing to violence. Video footage from an ATM captured Cosby the day before he left Hawaii. On that footage, investigators noticed a large, distinct mark above his right eyebrow. A wound, fresh. Ivy had left her mark on him. She'd injured him during their struggle. Even facing death, she had fought back. The case was coming together. More than 3 months after Ivy's death, Master Sergeant Nathaniel Cosby was officially charged. The charges were murder, obstruction of justice, patronizing a prostitute, an Article 32 hearing, the military's equivalent of a preliminary hearing, was held to determine whether sufficient evidence existed for a court-martial. The military judge reviewed the evidence and found probable cause. Nathaniel Cosby would stand trial for the murder of Ivanice Harris. Cosby's defense team knew they were facing overwhelming evidence. Surveillance footage placing him with Ivy, cell phone data placing him at the dump site, DNA evidence placing Ivy inside his duffel bag, the wound on his face, the broken fingernails. How do you defend against all of that? Their strategy: self-defense. According to Cosby's account, he had hired Ivy as an escort. They went back to his hotel room. After their encounter, Ivy demanded more money from him, more than they'd agreed upon. When Cosby attempted to leave the room, Ivy allegedly pulled out a lipstick knife, a small blade concealed in a lipstick container, and slashed at him. In response, Cosby claimed he put her in a chokehold. He was only trying to restrain her, he said. He didn't mean to kill her. When he realized she was dead, he panicked. He disposed of her body because he was embarrassed and didn't want to bring shame to his family or the Marine Corps. That was his story. But when pressed for details during court proceedings, when asked to describe the struggle blow by blow, Cosby couldn't provide a coherent account. He described the situation as chaos. He couldn't explain precisely how events unfolded, why a lipstick knife would have been available to Ivy, or how a defensive maneuver had somehow resulted in her death. The prosecution had a different interpretation of the evidence, and they were ready to present it. While Cosby faced military justice, another investigation was unfolding. Mark Miles Jr., Ivy's boyfriend and pimp, became the target of a federal probe called Operation Traffic Stop. The FBI was cracking down on Portland area pimps who were trafficking women across state lines for prostitution. Miles was one of 10 pimps indicted as part of the operation. Federal prosecutors charged him with violating the Mann Act and the Travel Act, transporting women from Portland to Hawaii, Alaska, Idaho, Minnesota, and Nevada specifically for prostitution. In federal court in Portland, Oregon, Mark Miles Jr. pleaded guilty to human trafficking charges. He admitted to transporting Ivanice Harris across state lines to engage in prostitution. He received 3 years in federal prison. But the most striking moment came at Miles's sentencing hearing. Ivy's parents showed up to support Miles. Her father, Marion Ivan Greer, made a statement after the hearing that revealed the complicated emotions surrounding his daughter's death. That man didn't make her do nothing. They were trying to taste that pot of gold. Both of them were out of line, and it was all done for nothing. A father's grief, a recognition that his daughter had made her own choices, and an acknowledgement that those choices had led her down a path that ended in tragedy. The court-martial began in April 2014. Unlike civilian trials with juries of ordinary citizens, military courts-martial use military panels. Juries composed of active-duty service members. An 8-member military panel was assembled to hear the evidence against Master Sergeant Nathaniel Cosby. The prosecution presented their case methodically. They showed the surveillance footage, the elevator at 3:41 a.m., the duffel bag at 5:58 a.m., the return at 9:14 a.m. They presented the cell phone data, the pings on the Waianae coast, the 400 miles on the rental car. They presented the DNA evidence, Ivy's biological material inside Cosby's duffel bag, her fingernail fragments, her hair. They presented the medical examiner's findings. And here's where the self-defense claim fell apart. Ivy hadn't died from a stab wound. If Cosby's story were true, if Ivy had attacked him with a lipstick knife, forcing him to defend himself, you'd expect the fatal injury to involve that struggle. You'd expect defensive wounds on Cosby consistent with a knife attack. Instead, the medical examiner testified that Ivy died from an injury to her neck consistent with strangulation. She was choked to death. Not stabbed, not cut, strangled. The prosecution reframed the evidence. That wound on Cosby's face? That wasn't from Ivy attacking him. That was from Ivy defending herself. She had fought back against her attacker, clawed at his face, left her mark while he was choking the life out of her. Those broken fingernails inside the duffel bag, evidence of a victim struggling desperately to survive, not an aggressor initiating violence. The prosecution's closing argument drove the point home. Ivanice had not died of a stab wound. She had been strangled by Nathaniel Cosby, and she had fought back, leaving her mark on his face and her DNA in his bag. Cosby had driven around the island for hours, looking for a place to dispose of Ivanice like garbage. She deserved better than that. She deserved justice. Some sources report that at the time of her death, Ivy was 4 weeks pregnant. The 8-member military panel deliberated. They reviewed the surveillance footage, the cell phone data, the DNA evidence, the medical examiner's testimony, Cosby's own contradictory account of events, and they reached their verdict. Guilty. Guilty of unpremeditated murder. Guilty of obstruction of justice. Guilty of patronizing a prostitute. The panel rejected Cosby's self-defense claim. They didn't believe that a trained Marine, a bomb disposal expert with 17 years of military training, accidentally killed a 28-year-old woman while simply trying to restrain her. They believed he strangled her. They believed he panicked. They believed he stuffed her body in a duffel bag, drove around the island looking for a place to dump her, and left her in the brush like she was nothing. The military panel's recommendation was severe: life in prison without the possibility of parole, dishonorable discharge from the United States Marine Corps, 17 years of military service, gone. His career, his rank, his benefits, all stripped away. Master Sergeant Nathaniel Cosby would spend the rest of his life behind bars at the U.S. Military Disciplinary Barracks at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, the Department of Defense's only maximum security prison. In August 2014, the commander of U.S. Marine Corps forces in the Pacific reviewed the jury's recommendation. He upheld the sentence. Cosby appealed. His appeals were unsuccessful. The conviction and life sentence stood.